My name is Rogan Graham. Welcome to the 2023 Women with a Movie Camera Summit. Um, I'm really happy to be talking about a person in history I feel really passionate about with you here today. It's funny, this is really funny. It's This is a very intimate audience and I really like it. You have to really stick with me on this, guys. It's going to be very in depth. So, no, I'm sure there are some of you who are wondering what Mariah Carey has to do with autism. But surprisingly, the seed for this kind of idea or history, as I'm about to tell it, was actually planted at the last Woman with a Movie Camera Summit. And so in 2019, Miriam Bale, writer, programmer, and creative director of the Indie Memphis Film Festival, she gave a talk on diva directors and speculated as to whether or not female directors in Hollywood might have more success if they embrace the negative connotations of diva in the way that many pop stars have. And she looked at the ways divas like Mariah Carey have taken control of their image and careers in a way that kind of aligns with auteurism by being the authors of their own star image as well as their music, their output. So I joined Miriam on stage to discuss Dee Reese, the director, and kind of her career. And then when Mariah released her memoir in 2020, The Meaning of Mariah Carey, I noticed that she spends more time talking about her music videos and her dreams of becoming an actress and her love for Marilyn Monroe more than she spends time writing about songwriting, which is what she's known for. I mean, notoriously, maybe this is inside baseball, but she got the melody for Hero on the toilet and in 10 minutes wrote this classic song. But to understand Mariah Carey and why I find her interesting. There we go. To understand her and her approach to image making and authoring her own stardom, we need to look back to where she came from and kind of meet her on the plane of reality that she kind of resides on, which is different to where the rest of us live, I think. Is anyone in the audience actually a Mariah Carey fan, or is this all going to be blank slate? Oh, okay. Okay, yes, black girls, come on. So, we'll start from the beginning. Mariah Carey's parents divorced when she was 3 years old. She lived primarily with her Irish-American mother, Patricia, who was an opera singer in the New York City Orchestra before Mariah was born, and who taught her jazz standards from age 8. She also told Mariah that she would never be half the singer that she was. Patricia was totally cut off from her family for marrying a black man. Mariah had sporadic contact with her father, Alfred Roy, throughout her childhood. He was Black American and Venezuelan American descent and was a stern and disciplined army veteran who didn't actually believe in music as a viable career path, though she loved him dearly. She had 2 older siblings, who she calls her ex-siblings. They were her brother Morgan and sister Allison. Morgan had the police called on him several times throughout his adolescence by their white mother, who Mariah claimed in her memoir treated the police like personal security. Morgan would later become a shady figure, selling drugs and doing crime in New York in the 80s and beyond, and would attempt to extort money from Mariah throughout her career. Her sister Allison became a mother at 16 and was married off in shame, later coming back to the family and unleashing her trauma on a very young Mariah. Without quoting entire sections, Mariah says of her relationship with her sister, "I was barely 12 years old and my sister had drugged me with Valium, offered me a pinky nail full of cocaine, inflicted me with third-degree burns, and tried to sell me out to a pimp." It was not a very happy beginning. Mariah talks about her siblings perceiving her to have an easier life living with their white mother, bouncing around from shack to shack, when as a family unit, her mixed heritage, like theirs was, would have been readily detectable. She believes they were resentful and wanted to punish her for being able to pass, something that as a child she had no notion of. There we go. And as I mentioned, another thing that struck me were the really long sections dedicated to venerating Marilyn Monroe. Mariah recalls in vivid detail seeing gentlemen prefer blondes for the first time through a crack in her mother's bedroom door. And she even quotes Monroe's memoir and various biographies throughout her own memoir. In the chapter, A Girl's Best Friend, Mariah writes, "From the moment I saw her, I felt both awe and identification. I idolized her. She was like a living doll, but neither baby nor Barbie. Though she was real, elegant, grown-up woman, she appeared pure and flawless, as if made of delicate lacquered porcelain. I'd never seen anyone like her, such a radiant, glamorous, vulnerable yet powerful being. Of the Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend number, she writes, she was poised like a dancer, yet her feet didn't seem to move. Instead, scores of people danced around her, fawning, fanning, kneeling and bowing to her, conveying her above their heads like Cleopatra. Maybe she was a queen, the shining queen of movie stars. And later, after detailing the depths of her childhood obsession, she writes, ultimately, that what she loved about Marilyn was her ability to come from nothing, to belong to no one, and evolve into a huge icon. I latched onto that, she writes. I believed in that. Since 1999, Mariah has owned Marilyn's baby grand piano. It's there, and she keeps it tuned and unplayed in her penthouse. Okay. So now it's 1988, and after taking Mariah's demo tape out of her hands at a record executive gala, the head of Columbia Records, Tommy Mottola, spun around the block in his limousine listening to it. Or so the legend goes. Mariah, now aged 19, had been working as a background vocalist and shopping her demo to anyone she could. Mottola spent 2 weeks trying to get hold of Mariah, and shortly after, she signed her first major record deal. After the success of her debut album, the eponymous Mariah Carey, released in 1990, which garnered 4 #1 records, 2 Grammys, and became the best-selling album of '91, Mariah was Columbia's and parent company Sony's golden goose. Bereft of any familial guidance and beguiled by Tommy's confidence and love bombing, in 1993, they married in what she calls her big fat Sony wedding. Tommy, 21 years Mariah's senior, was able to protect her from the jealousies of her mother and vindictive schemes of her siblings, but that protection came with strings. In the section of her memoir titled Sing Sing, the disaffectionate name she gave their mansion, named after a prison they didn't live too far from, Mariah details keeping a to-go bag of essentials under her side of the marital bed in case she was in danger and needed a quick escape. How when she would go to get water in the middle of the night, his voice would boom over the intercom asking what she was up to. How his armed security often followed her from room to room of their mansion, and how she was isolated from anyone her own age or race. Mariah repeats throughout the memoir that it was their shared love of music that made their relationship work to begin with. But as we edge into the mid-90s, he was increasingly unable to get on board with the popularity of hip-hop, and his racist ideologies bubbled to the surface. So, this is where Mariah the director comes in. In 1995, after achieving 8 #1 records in 5 whirlwind years, Mariah released one of her most enduring songs to date, the remix to the #1 song Fantasy. The original was her 8th #1, spending 8 weeks at the top, when the remix with Wu-Tang Clan's ODB came into the mix. Mottola was less than pleased, claiming that he could do what ODB or any other rapper did, and ultimately letting his bigotry get in the way of his musical ear. Mariah, unhappy with her previous videos and unsupported by her label, directed and funded the video herself. She contrasted her demure, saccharine image with the affronting weirdness and rawness of ODB in a fun fairground caper, surrounded by black people, listening to music and having fun with people her own age. There we go. Mariah's race and ethnicity have always been a point of discussion throughout her career. Mottola was hell-bent on capitalizing off the gimmick of a perceived white woman with the talents and tastes of a black woman, telling her that he preferred her with natural curly hair as she looked more authentically Italian, whereas with straightened hair, she looked like a black girl who had straightened her hair. Due to this, the way white audiences or fans of the adult contemporary genre saw Mariah was in Due to this, the way white audiences or fans of the adult contemporary genre saw Mariah was in contradiction with how she saw herself. Mariah always considered herself an R&B artist inspired by her contemporaries Faith Evans and Mary J. Blige. The audience only catch up to that vision years later. In 1997, when Mariah had released my personal favourite album, Butterfly, she was well aware of her power as an artist and young woman, and the Mottola Carey divorce was fortunately well underway. It is here her visual rebellion or revolution became most notable. Dej Mahoney, a talking head in the John O'Confor documentary Mariah Carey, Billion Dollar Babe, and former Sony music executive, recalls the moment that the air went stale in Sony offices and jaws dropped to the floor as people at Sony saw the video for the first time. A clear dig at Tommy. So, has everyone seen the video here? Honey? Yeah, can I get a show of hands because I'm not... Wow, this guy's... You need to... Okay. So, For the people unfamiliar, the video sees Mariah being held hostage in a mansion by an exaggerated Italian mob figure. Some of you might recognize that guy from Goodfellas. She then frees herself, kicking him with an iconic Tom Ford Figucci stiletto, jumps off the balcony into the pool, stripping off underwater and emerging Bond girl style to escape via jet ski to a secluded island with her model lover. The chorus also sees Mariah surrounded by black male dancers, and in the remix video featuring The Lox, produced by P. Diddy, or Puffy then, she dances around on a helicopter with Jadakiss and P. Diddy. P. Diddy, who Mariah claims Tommy said would be better off working as a shoe shine. There we go. So, the now iconic video, the incredibly expensive video, seems like the standard R&B fare looking back. But at the time, this was the reception Mariah's bold new image got from the white public. Sandra Bernhard, who's someone you might recognise from Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy, had this to say in her 1998 special. I'm not going to read it out. I kind of thought maybe she was jealous that she wasn't Robert De Niro's type, but it was probably deeper than that. I included that quote just to illustrate that while appropriation of black culture was for a period very profitable, where now in 2023 it's black outrage that takes celebrities to the bank, in the late 90s when Mariah finally had the freedom to embrace her true heritage, relatively free from a controlling and abusive man, she faced brutal and brazen racism. Throughout the 90s, Mottola garnered a reputation for being a shark in the music industry. His claws weren't only sunk into Mariah, even stars like the one pictured went to humiliating public extremes to get their freedom from Sony. Post-divorce, and knowing Tommy would never cave, Mariah flew herself to meet with the head of the Sony Corporation in Japan. She sat in a boardroom, lawyerless, and negotiated an out for her contract. This agreement was 3 more albums, Rainbow, which featured Heartbreaker, with Jay-Z, his first #1 song. I don't think he's ever had a #1 song actually without a female artist attached, but that was his first. A greatest hits album and an album of #1s. If there are any George Michael fans in the room, they might get a clearer understanding of just what a massive feat it was to negotiate an out with Sony like that. But after all that, fortunately, Mariah ended the 90s on the ultimate high. So now we're going to play a clip of her accepting the award, the Billboard Award for Artist of the Decade. She was nominated against Aerosmith, Michael Bolton, Boyz II Men, Toni Braxton, Garth Brooks, Celine Dion, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, Madonna, and Shania Twain. Could I have the first clip, please?
Here's a clue. Billboard's Artist of the Decade holds the record for most weeks one single has ever held the #1 spot. Here's another clue. Except for Elvis and the Beatles, this person has more #1 hits than any other artist in history. This truly international artist who transcends all categories wrote their first single at age 4, their first platinum album at age 18, and has gone platinum in 33 countries. And according to Haynes, has the best legs in the business. Woo! Here is the Billboard Artist of the Decade, my granddaughter, my goddaughter. She's my everything. She just called me and said, "Godmother, help me." I don't have to help you. Miss Mariah Carey, you're all up. Come on!
Everyone needs a fairy godmother to help them out, and this is an angel right here. Thank you, Patti LaBelle. I love you. Thank you. Oh. Woo! Woo! This is all very surreal to me because it seems, honestly, it seems like not so long ago that I was a kid in high school with a demo tape and a lot of determination and just really the desire to hear my songs on the radio. I mean, I didn't know about platinum or gold records or like what you had to sell to get them. I mean, I didn't even know about the Billboard charts. Sorry, but I didn't know. And then it all happened so fast, and it's like my life became public. I lived in the recording studio, writing and singing, and that's how I made so many records in so little time, pretty much having no life. But I'd like to thank my mom for inspiring me and thank Don Einer and all my Columbia Records family for so much support. And I'd like to thank all the amazingly dedicated Sony people around the world. And obviously, I have to thank Tommy Mottola for his support, specifically during the beginning of my career. And I have to thank everyone at Maroon Entertainment for their unparalleled dedication. I've been traveling around the world, right, you know, promoting Rainbow, my new album, and it's kind of like my message of hope for the new millennium, and it's been so moving to see so many devoted fans in continents where we don't even speak the same language, where people are singing back the lyrics to me that I wrote, and that means so much to me because I put all of myself into my music. So as a writer and as a producer, I thank you, and I'm so grateful to God to have overcome so many obstacles as a multiracial person with a very dysfunctional history until recently. I am not Cinderella. My life has not been a fairy tale. Forget the image, forget the ensembles, forget the rumors, forget the short skirts, big hair, whatever. I owe this to the fans, and I will never forget you. So I want to accept this award on behalf of all of you. You've come a long way, and I feel like I'm just getting started. Because as an artist, and most importantly, as a person, I am genuinely happy and finally free to be who I really am. Thank you.
I'd apologise for the quality, but I'm really grateful to the fan who like clearly recorded that on the video and put it on YouTube. It's like fans are some of the best archivists. Yeah, but as you can see, there are really interesting things about that clip. I think the walk to the stage, she was seated so far back. When you see the full clip and the nominations are read out, how she gets the least cheers, less cheers than Garth Brooks. People didn't think she was going to win. Again, how far back she was sat, and also how celebrities, you know, fans had a bit more access in the 90s. I found that really, really interesting. But as you can see, she ended the decade on a real high and going into the new millennium with so much hope and ambition and a sense of freedom. But, you know, unfortunately, things don't always go that way. There we go. So has anyone seen Glitter here? Seen it several times. And as you can see, it was not a great success. Let me get my thing back up. There we go. So while Glitter, the soundtrack, was under her new deal with Virgin, an earth-shattering $80 million cash deal, the largest for one artist in history, still to this day, the production of Glitter had already begun under the banner of Sony Pictures. So during couples therapy, towards the end of their marriage, their therapist, who of course was actually just Tommy's therapist, and Mariah came to some of the sessions, encouraged him to let Mariah take acting classes. Inspired, of course, by Marilyn Monroe, it had been Mariah's dream to be a singer/actress, something Tommy forbade as he had less influence in Hollywood, even getting violently angry at the prospect of Mariah potentially starring in a remake of How to Marry a Billionaire, an unsubstantiated rumour that went round early on in her career. It was Mariah's acting teacher who set her up with a secret apartment next to her acting studio, the acting teacher who gave her first taste of freedom and security as an adult. By the time film production rolls around in 2000-2001, Mariah was working with the screenwriter Kate Lanier, who wrote the incredible Tina Turner biopic, What's Love Got to Do with It?, starring Angela Bassett. And they were receiving studio notes from Sony several times a day, which effectively meant that they had no script to work from. Mariah intended for her love interest in the film to be played by Terrence Howard, but per studio notes, he was deemed too dark-skinned to play opposite her and was cast in the role of the villain. Terrence Howard was too dark-skinned to play opposite her. Tommy's surveillance of Mariah didn't end with their divorce and his overbearing jealousy. His need for control and undue influence on the studio completely derailed the project. At the new label, Mariah had an entirely new team who all felt the pressure of making the cash deal work. She worked for days on end without sleep or food. The exhaustion made her manic and desperate and even more paranoid about Tommy, and with good reason. Glitter, set in the 80s, naturally required an 80s heavy soundtrack. She was especially excited to nab a sample of the song Firecracker by Yellow Magic Orchestra for the lead single Loverboy. This single was ready well in advance of any film or soundtrack release date, but Sony spies were everywhere. She was also excited to collaborate with rapper Ja Rule on the song If We for the soundtrack. Tommy, who had been so against Mariah working with rappers, swooped in to steal both the Firecracker sample and a Ja Rule collaboration for his latest racially ambiguous entertainer. Tommy used this entertainer as Mariah's penance for humiliating him personally and professionally by asserting her freedom. Mariah was arrogant enough to reject the perceived gift of whiteness or ambiguity that Tommy had spent so long cultivating for her. He was on a mission to prove that she was replaceable and that he could mould someone into the vision she had for her own career faster than she could. And while the iconic meme and the fan vitriol is often levied at this particular entertainer, Tommy honestly could have used any opportunist, as he was so desperate to attain what Mariah had already achieved for herself. In Jessica Simpson's autobiography, she writes that when she was 17, Tommy pinched her stomach fat and told her to start taking diet pills. I think he wanted me to look like Mariah. At that point, it was all about having the torso out. The Destiny's Child single, Bootylicious, was released 2 weeks earlier than scheduled at a cut price rate to clash with the release of Mariah's Loverboy. He wanted to drive the sales and push Destiny's Child to make sure that she didn't debut at number 1. And she didn't. She debuted at number 2, which for a film soundtrack is still really good. But it wasn't good enough to warrant $80 million in cash. Tommy would have used anyone and anything to leverage his power against her. So as the sabotage and exhausted hysteria took control, Mariah desperately devised a plan to get more attention for Glitter, an attempt which only granted more controversy. On July 19th, 2001, Mariah showed up unannounced to Total Request Live in an oversized Loverboy shirt, pushing an ice cream cart, wild-eyed, and saying that she needs some therapy and that she wants to talk with everyone and just have a therapeutic time and enjoy herself. She was wild-eyed, and the host would not play along. She took off her oversized top to reveal a tiny outfit, and the host kept on exclaiming, Mariah Carey is stripping on TRL Live. So, of course, headlines read similar things. Humiliated and delirious, Mariah cancelled on a video shoot so she could rest. She was waken up by her management team several times, and she escaped to her mother's house, to then be woken up by her mother, insisting she get up and get back to work. Her mother, working on the side of the label, harassed her in her own house that Mariah had paid for, and Mariah lost her temper. So, of course, her mum called the police. Her brother Morgan slid into the back of a police car with her and said she'd be taken to a spa. She ended up in a mental health facility where she was held and drugged against her will, and only released when 9/11 attacks hit their TV screens. The day the Glitter soundtrack was released was on 9/11. She writes in her memoir, I was magically good to go just because some terrorists attacked America and suddenly a cracked up diva wasn't as interesting. In that third image there, she also writes in her memoir that her mum says, see, now you're finally like Marilyn, as the paparazzi hid in the bushes. I think that knowing what we know now about the treatment of female stars in that period, and the fact that Mariah Carey was more financially liquid than she'd ever been, it's frightening to think of how different her life could have ended up. Does anyone remember this guy? No, neither do I. If we could have the next clip, please.
And I was like, why are you so obsessed with me? In your house, saying I'm up in your car, but you in LA, and I'm out at your mains. I'm up in the A, you so lame. and no one here even mentions your name. It must be the weird, it must be the it. Cause you be poppin', heard you get it poppin'. Why you so obsessed with me? Boy, I wanna know. Lying that you're sexing me when everybody knows. It's clear that you're upset with me.
So, as you can see, there was a decades-long, kind of probably longer actually, feud between these two artists. In the midst of Mariah's so-called breakdown, she prefers the term diva fit. This man decided to mention on several occasions they had an intimate relationship, mocking her on stage, on the radio, and in his songs, something that Mariah strongly denies. The saga, however, continues for the entire decade, culminating in the 2009 song Obsessed, which depicts him as an obsessive fan reappropriating his own 90s hit song Stan to illustrate his pathetic and frightening behaviour. She also incorporates Mean Girl elements with the bus ending and the opening of Why You So Obsessed With Me. She also pokes fun at her own image of a self-obsessed diva, one that she had fully embraced by 2009. This instance is important for me to mention when we discuss authorship and world building and image making and her deciding her own mythology. It's because these events, though very public and iconic in my opinion, are completely omitted from her memoir. She doesn't allude to them, she doesn't mention them once, she doesn't mention this song, the video, its creation, because to her, the narrative of her life, being a biracial woman publicly harassed by a deranged white man, is something that she just decided not to embrace when she was writing her own story. But before we got to the best diss track of all time, there of course had to be a comeback. There we go. So after the Glitter debacle, Mariah was a laughingstock. The failure of Glitter was mocked relentlessly. There was even an extended skit on that year's Oscar ceremony called Gutter. And after a lackluster response to the 2002 album Charm Bracelet, a perfect R&B album and probably one of my all-time favourites, she regrouped and came back with the 10 times platinum selling album The Emancipation of Mimi, which I think is aptly titled. It was produced by Jermaine Dupri, the hip-hop producer behind Always Be My Baby, and the entire era was styled entirely by the late, great Andre Leon Talley. It's my belief that from this moment onwards, Mariah is able to self-actualise and kind of become the Marilyn she always wanted to be in her mind as a child. Instead of rebuffing slanderous rumours, she owned them and left the line blurry between persona and person. Mariah Carey knows what you're going to say about her because she has used her public image to already write it. There's little you can write about those images that aren't explicitly there. She even adopts a kind of dumb blonde persona in interviews, using a very literal humour that people often don't pick up on. I think my favourite example of this is if someone asks, well, Rick Edwards from T4, do you remember T4? He interviewed her once and he said, oh, my life's so boring, you know, I just have on my to-do list, pay Bill. And there's an extended bit of asking who Bill is. So I think it's really great. She avoids answering questions in interviews by offering Godiva chocolates or champagne, which she kind of keeps on her person. She travels with her own lighting director and will only be professionally photographed from the right side of her face. In 2018, on the brink of the release of her album Caution, the Lamely decided it was finally time to get #Justice for Glitter. Lambs mobilised and sent the soundtrack to #1 on the iTunes charts by mass purchasing it, even though it wasn't available on streaming. The Glitter soundtrack is a solid album, and there's no reason it kind of wouldn't be, honestly. All her albums are really good. But its association with the movie and, of course, world events ruined its chances. Mariah herself refused to acknowledge or perform songs from the album until the resurgence, because, of course, that debacle was not part of her personal mythology. She doesn't acknowledge things that she doesn't want to, and you have to meet her where she is. However, post-Glitter and post-Comeback, there was still a split in the public perception of Mariah. One that you can see, and I'm sure you all know, she fully embraces, and she really racks those endorsement deals up. I would argue that in the white public imagination, Mariah Carey is the diva queen of Christmas, but a vocal powerhouse of yonder year. There's an eternity to her songs, the adult contemporary middle-of-the-road ballads that lend themselves to the Simon Cowell talent show songbook year-round, and to some that is as deep as her cultural resonance goes. The failure of Glitter meant that to many people she faded into obscurity bar once a year, which is still probably more success than Tommy would have liked for her. However, to the black community, Mariah is still considered a pioneer in bridging the gap between street and mainstream acclaim in the hip-hop community. As I mentioned, giving Jay-Z his first #1 record with Heartbreaker, and revolutionising the remix by working with producers David Cole and CNC Music Factory, and David Morales, totally overhauling her most notable ballads, reworking her vocals, which is something people still don't do with remixes, they just reincorporate the same ones, and turning her ballads into something that's playable in clubs, in particular gay clubs. As when she was married to Tommy, the only time she was allowed out was to gay clubs, because that was all his ego could handle in terms of her being around men that he couldn't control. So as the Lamely grows from generation to generation, a convenient narrative recurs online that considers Mariah the kind of foremother of the pop-rap collaboration. Her musical freedom from Matola's adult contemporary noose became a blueprint for middle-of-the-road pop stars to break into this kind of bad girl image. But my feeling is this narrative denies that Mariah has always seen herself first and foremost as an R&B artist. By crediting her with the influx of culture vultures, saddles her with a kind of legacy of using blackness as a tool of rebellion against white culture, a culture that she never actually belonged to. Mariah's cash deal is still, as I mentioned, the highest ever paid out to a solo artist, and she is still the solo artist with the most #1s, bested only by the Beatles, and there's only one song between them. When accusations of blackfishing fly over the heads of young pop stars, I don't wholeheartedly believe that they want to be black. I believe record executives want another Mariah Carey. So, the elusive auteur. The writer of lyrics and melodies, producer of timeless classics, director of music videos, and the author of her own star image. She wrestled these rights from the hands of greedy executives, abusive husbands, and conniving family members, and at the age of 8 years old, tasked herself with bringing levity and glamour to an otherwise dour and serious world. I think of Whitney Houston and Aaliyah, and how so few black women have lived through the harsh realities and glaring spotlight as she has, and have made it to the other side with the authority to write their own truth and image. Thinking now, of course, of Marilyn, and how few bold blondes, dead or alive, leave behind an image that isn't relentlessly pillaged and distorted. If a film in itself, or in its most rudimentary sense, is a continuous moving image displayed in cinema, on television, or on your phone, what is it to be a public person in 2023? It's moving image. No one is both star and author in the way that Mariah Carey is.